Hello everybody. Well, it's 12 noon. That can only mean one thing. It is time. It is time for the big thrill of your week, because today I, John Wilkes, Chief Executive of the Institute of Health and Social Care Management, have the absolute privilege of introducing you all to Claire Mould from Curve Learning. And Claire has been generous enough to offer her time to speak to us all about the fundamental importance of emotional intelligence. This is all part of a series on this particular topic that we're pulling together for you all. We do hope you enjoy it. Just to re-emphasize one important aspect, we are recording this event, but we will be carefully editing it to make sure that any of you who wish to express opinions and so on about EI and such like will have the opportunity to do so in a safe and confidential space. Beyond that, I'm just personally thrilled to be watching this. Claire, I'm going to hand straight over to you. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, John. As always, it's a real pleasure to be part of the team doing one of these workshops. So, as John said, what this workshop, and we will finish promptly at 1, so you can just focus on this, and then we will be away at 1 o'clock. What we're going to focus on is the fundamental importance of emotional intelligence in the workplace, specifically with reference today on effective leadership. It will cover some areas. There'll be no pressure put on anybody, but I am going to do a couple of activities where you will be invited to share with the group if you want to, whether that's through chat or whether that's through putting your hand up. And Jade has very kindly offered to, as it's a large group of us, to keep an eye on that. Absolutely no compulsion to do that, but if you feel you want to, then that would be most welcome. And no confidential personal information will be shared if you say, actually, I'd rather that not be shared. So said that she would edit in accordance. So moving swiftly on then, so just very quickly then, just to canter through a summary of what we'll do. The first thing I'll do is actually outline what is emotional intelligence, because I think a lot of people think they know what it is, or we use it, it's become such a broadly used term that it's almost become diluted. And then we'll move on to why is it specifically fundamental in the workplace, and then take that one step further and say, why is it essential that effective leaders adopt an emotionally intelligent approach if they really want to optimise the growth within their organisation? And I'll provide some examples throughout and some reasons. I will tell you, because this is about emotional intelligence, and what I'm not going to do, I'm not just going to suddenly say, oh, here's a PowerPoint, and then everybody put in the chat, oh, will the PowerPoint will be available afterwards. I want you to really embed what we're saying, so really internalise it and listen to what's going on. As John said, this is part of a series, and Jade knows me well enough, as does John. If anybody wants any more information about anything that I've said, I'm happy to have a dialogue with them. Link in with me on LinkedIn, connect with me, and I'm happy to have a dialogue. But what I want for you to do today is just listen and internalise. We all learn in different ways. Some of you will want to make notes. Some of you will just want to take it in an auditory way. Entirely up to you. But this isn't going to be PowerPoint dependent. This is an interaction between you and I. So let's kick off then. So emotional intelligence, in the simplest terms, is the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and then to handle interpersonal relationships carefully and empathetically. Okay, and so there's two sides. It's the ability to manage your own emotions, but then it's being aware of the responsibility you have as a leader to know that you're responsible for potentially managing the interpersonal relations of other people. And what we have to be really open about is, from a nature-nurture perspective, actually people differ in the way that they are adept at recognising emotions, okay, both in themselves and in others. And that's really key for emotional intelligence as a starting point, because that really enables you to see how understanding you are in your communications. I come across an awful lot of people that say that they're emotionally intelligent, but actually aren't. They're very pleasant people, but they're not very good at reading other people. They're not very good at understanding, and we're going to come on to that later on in the presentation, the difference between being understood and seeking to understand. People think that, and so often we hear leaders turn around and say, but I've told them that 100 times, or I don't know why that person got so upset. And actually, just because you've said something in a certain way, you don't know how somebody has heard that. Emotionally intelligent people are good at referencing. Emotionally intelligent people are those people in the meeting who, you know, just go around and reference, and they notice if somebody looks a little bit perturbed, they'll either draw them into the meeting, they'll say, actually, did you have something to say? Or they'll just make a note of it and say afterwards, are you okay? You looked a little bit, rather than going away saying, oh, well, so-and-so looked miserable, didn't they? And certain people don't know how they're presenting themselves. I've had to stop meetings before because I was speaking and somebody was physically rolling their eyes. And so I had to, and I just called them out on it, and I just sort of turned around and I said, I'm really sorry, but could you stop rolling your eyes when I'm saying things? So, you know, I understand that you don't take, you know, if you've got a point that needs to be said, then please raise your hand and join it, and let's have a constructive conversation about it. But you're actually bringing negativity to the group. And the response, oh, I'm really sorry, I always do that. I would be rubbish at poker. I made a joke of it. And I'm thinking, actually, no, you need to be aware. I mean, I've been around long enough to know that, you know, like I say, I called it out on it. But if you're trying to have that as a leader, or if you're part of the group, actually, that can be quite intimidating. If somebody's physically, so emotional intelligence is picking up those prompts. Now, ideally, interactions leave us feeling content and connected. That's what we want. That's the whole thing, that you come away thinking, yeah, that's fine. We might not always agree with it, but you think, actually, yeah, I understand what they're saying. You know, it leaves feeling content. But actually, sometimes a communication can leave you feeling alienated and upset. Now, the trick, and this is where we really are going to be unpicking over the next few weeks, is the trick is that to know, does the other person feel the same as you? I've done an awful lot of work on effective negotiation skills and managing and working with, you know, effective communications in the workplace. And people say, oh, actually, but I've told this to my team. And there are some team members, and you're all experienced individuals, there are some team members that leave the meeting going, oh, thank goodness for that. I'm really clear that she's out. I made it really, really clear what she wants to do. And other people that leave going, oh, that was a bit bombastic, wasn't it? You know, or that actually made me feel as if they were, you know, machine gunning, you know, things to me. And I actually felt quite intimidated by that. And the trick is, you're going to have a variety of teams, you're going to have a variety of colleagues, you're going to have a variety of board members that all respond to things in different ways. So emotionally intelligent people need to know how you can adapt your communications to know how to respond. And the starting point of that is you cannot assume that the people automatically hear exactly what you think you're saying. People don't hear in the same way. Don't make any assumptions. You can't make an assumption on how you've made other people feel. You've got to sort of find how the reference is to check in to say, actually, how do I know this? Because sometimes it isn't practical for us to go around everybody in the room. I can't go around everybody on this meeting and saying, oh, can I just have a stock check here? How's everybody feeling? You've got to pick up the prompts. You've got to learn to pick up those prompts, and you've got to practice that. And we'll come on to that later. If you know, you've got to practice some skills of thinking, actually, how can I pick up those prompts of how that left the team feeling? And also knowing and preempting, how do I think this is going to, because sometimes you have got to have hard conversations. Emotional intelligence isn't all about saying, I'm going to go in and make everybody feel fantastic afterwards. You've sometimes got to have really, really difficult conversations. You know, I've had to, you know, in my life, make people redundant. I've had to tell people that unfortunately the anticipated pay rise that they thought they were going to get actually isn't going to happen, because I'm busy running a charity and we've had all our funding cut. I've had to have very hard conversations, but you can deliver those hard conversations in an emotionally intelligent way if you know the individuals, and that means that you've got to take the time to understand what the reference points are of those of the individuals that you are interacting with, which is why many of us, even though these Zoom meetings are absolutely fantastic and meeting through Teams, you've got to work really hard at picking up what those prompts are, because sometimes you can just, you can just lose those, and gradually there can be a distance. And it's a conversation for another day. We look at emotional intelligence in the workplace, of actually how much we need face-to-face interactions in addition to other forms of communications. I don't think I need to tell an informed group like yourselves of the dangers of email when we're sending something through email, how people infer it in a particular way. And how often have we picked up an email that we think, oh, actually that was quite bombastic, and we won't even get onto the fact of people sending text to inform people about certain things. But it's very easy when people say, oh, but that's what we do now because we haven't got time to get face to face. I'll send a send all email. You've got to start thinking, actually, do I want to send this to everybody? Even though everybody needs, the amount of times I hear leaders say, yeah, but everybody needs to hear this. It is really important to tell them that tell the whole staff. But actually, is that the most emotionally intelligent thing to do? Because you have a variety of staff who will take that message in a different way. You've got some staff that are more robust and will be able to cope with it, but you've got other staff that actually will really struggle with that. You've got some board members that will be able to read a board report and it'll be bang, bang, bang. Yes, I can just do that. I get it. And other board members that actually need to be talked through. And it's up to you to be in control of your emotional intelligence to make the call on how to do that. Now, what we're going to do is just very quickly do a quick exercise for you just to take a moment for you to start thinking about the range of interactions that you have. Can everybody see that on the screen now? So when I did an exercise in this before, somebody took away and they said, actually, what I'm going to do, I often walk past people and I think, actually, I really like your shirt, or I really like your dress, or I really like, not in a like freaky way, but just like in a pleasant way. And they said, do you know what, if I walk past somebody and I really like what they're wearing, rather than just thinking, gosh, that looks really, really nice, I'm going to actually say to them. And I thought, oh, that's really, really bold. It's quite. So I thought, well, I'm going to set myself a challenge. I'm not going to go and do it in a superficial way, but I am going to say to somebody, and it was, and I did exactly that. And it was just an arbitrary thing. I was just, dashing on my way to a meeting. I was working in London. I happened to be at Paddington Station. And I was going past somebody and I just said, oh, can I just say, actually, I really, really do like your jacket. It looks, it looks really, really, really nice. I just wanted to say you look really, it really suits you. It looks really, really good. And this person just beamed and looked really, really, really nice, and just sort of said, oh, that's really kind of you. Thank you very much. And it was just, we were at Paddington Station. It literally was a 2-second thing. And I thought, and do you know what? It made me feel better than it made her feel. And equally, at Paddington Station, this is me confiding. You don't need to cut this bit out, Jade. Everybody knows I'm, equally have bad moments of emotional intelligence. I knew that I needed to dash to get the tube because I needed to be somewhere to do a presentation. And I did the thing that I hate, that I always criticise when I'm in London. You're pushing past people, and to get, you come out of the station and everybody's talking, and I kind of bumped past somebody. And there was a family that were clearly, visiting, and I kind of accidentally sort of bumped into them, and they sort of went, oh, whoa, whoa, and I kind of looked behind, but I was dashing on, and I felt awful. I thought, oh no, I've turned into that person in London that's just banging my way past because I want to be the first one on the tube, because actually it was more important for me to get that tube, to get to the presentation, because I'm the most important person in that station. And actually, I thought, that made that family think, God, who on earth was that rude woman brushing past? And it's those things we need to think of. I've given 2 out-of-work examples, but actually, if we practice those out-of-work examples, we start to reflect in the workplace what we do. So in summary, then very quickly, that emotional intelligence refers to our ability to identify and regulate our own emotions and recognise the emotions of others. so we can feel empathy towards them. And this is where we get onto the really exciting bit that you're thinking, right, Claire, come on then, let's cut to the chase. This leads to the effective communication, and this is a bit that facilitates healthy, productive relationships with others. And this is key to our psychological well-being, which leads to physical health and this, wait for it, professional growth and success. And that, my friends, has come directly from research that's been done by Harvard Medical School. So when people think that emotional intelligence in the workplace is a wishy-washy, frothy thing and bringing cake on a Friday, I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about create an environment in your workplace that means that your productivity increases, your rates of sickness go down. These are all things that we want to be seeing. So moving on then, we want to be looking specifically for the next 10 minutes or so at the effect it has on our ability to develop our own meaningful professional lives, giving us a sense of purpose, and also those individuals who are in leadership areas or influential areas. You can be one of a team. How many times have we heard within a team, oh, there's a bad apple that brings everybody down? You don't have to be an official team leader or manager to bring everybody down. You can just be, you know, part of a rotated squad that can just drive people on. We want to create an environment where we've got people who are emotionally intelligent and show genuine empathy that fully understand what that fully understand and manage their emotions, okay, and have awareness of how others express and manage their emotions. Because in the workplace, you've got a responsibility, if you're a leader, to support other people with this and understand. And then this is you influencing the emotions of others, okay? And we have all seen it, but we don't do anything about it. We resign and say, oh, well, that's just who they are. And that is not good enough. That simply isn't good enough. How many times you come in and you think, actually, this person is dragging everybody down, or, oh, well, that's just, we make excuses for them and say, oh, well, that's just who they are. That is just their style. No, this is impacting our work productivity. If you're not doing it because you're a compassionate person, and I mean, you know, I speak on another day about the importance of compassionate leadership, but if you're not doing it from a compassionate leadership perspective, think about it from the bottom line perspective. It leads to greater productivity and greater organisational growth. When you show empathy and emotional intelligence towards others, their defensive energy, and that's a phrase that Stephen Covey uses, their defensive energy goes down and their positive energy replaces it. And that leads to greater organisational growth. And we all know, I mean, I've done, you know, my PhD is in neurology and the links between emotional intelligence and cognitive intelligence. So I can give you the neurological speak, but we all know practically when we are feeling emotionally drained, when our defensive energy is up, it's actually more exhausting. It's more exhausting to be negative than it is to be positive. And that is why you will see that growth in your teams. Max Carver says, empathy is the starting point for creating a community who will work with you to take action. It's the impetus for creating change. And so often we turn around and say, oh, well, change management is really difficult. It's really difficult to get. And it's because actually people don't get the initial building blocks. They go straight to the, well, we've got this strategic plan, we've got this business plan, and they come at it from a, you know, shoulder pads and strength, and this is what we do because this is what this false perception of good leadership is about, rather than saying, hold on a minute, before I introduce any change, let's feel the temperature of what's going on in the organisation. To say, this isn't to say that we're not going to introduce change, but that can be our gauge of how we can do it. We need to empathise with the individuals that we are working with from a change perspective. I always think that leaders are the barometer. How you can come in can set the tone. I hate it. I was at meeting the other day, and the CEO said, oh yeah, well, I'll just drop in to, you know, to see, because I want them to endorse that the piece of work that you're doing is really, and basically he swooped in, sat down, sort of barked a few things that, even though they were very positive, they did go out bark, and then swooped out again. And actually the essence of what he said was really, really good, but it got lost because everybody immediately thought, oh, stand by your beds, here's the CEO, he's come in, he's going to bark a few things and then go out again. And it was a shame because it lost what he was trying to say was, and what I had to say for him afterwards was, that was him showing he really, really has invested both personally and financially in what we're doing. He is giving you, he's delegating you responsibility to get on with this project. He's giving your blessing for it. And of course, what I had to, the thought bubble that I didn't say was, unfortunately, he came in and did that in such a pompous way that it's come across as if he's literally just putting lip service to this and doesn't care at all. And it's such a shame because him coming in and dealing that in a more emotionally intelligent way would have made people far more creative and would have, it made everyone say, oh, well, hold on a minute, I didn't write those points down, what were they? And I said, all he was doing was endorsing what you're doing. And it's a shame because he handled that in such an ineffective way, which leads me on to say that, you know, if you're not emotionally intelligent, this can lead to a detrimental impact on organisations, and this will result on individual employees. There's a reason that we're seeing stress levels going up. There's a reason that we're seeing productivity levels going down. And this isn't just simply to do with recruitment. It isn't simply to do with overwork. It's to do with emotionally intelligence. Charles Blow turns around and he says, one doesn't have to operate with great malice to do great harm. The absence of empathy and understanding are sufficient. And that is the point that we know that, and in the most caring order, particularly given the last couple of years, I've done some observations on this, and there's a lot of work that the NHS is doing on this as well, that I've noticed that people have had to, because we've had to deal with really, really difficult scenarios, people have had to put on their sort of Teflon jackets, they've got their iron shields, because you all know, and I know that I'm talking to people that have experienced this, if you let every bit of emotion get to you through the last couple of years that we've seen, when I've been supporting care managers that have seen over a weekend, you know, 10 of their residents die, and they've had to cope with that. They've had to be put in situations where they've had to deal with staff members who have had family members die, and then say, well, when are you coming back to work? You know, that takes its toll. It's, you know, completely unrealistic of us not to think it takes a toll. And the way that we cope with that is we have to make ourselves Teflon. Right, deep breath, let's go into work, let's do this, because if I take my actual person into work, that's going to impact me. And that is the coping strategy that people have done. But what's happened is, and it's been interesting, and this has been the piece of research that I'm drawing this on, was particularly came from a group of staff working in acute care. What's happening is they're coming in doing really, really good jobs, but they're not being compassionate, they're not being emotionally intelligent, and they're still staying with their iron shields around them, they're still staying Teflon when they're talking to people. So I've gone in and I've observed, and actually the quality of those interactions has been quite abrupt, and that has really impacted the teams that they are managing. That has impacted them, and it's had, so a bad scenario has been made worse just by people trying to protect themselves. Whereas if we adopt a more emotionally intelligent approach to building our resilience, then actually that enhances and aids things rather than pushes people away. Because if you imagine, if we're all absolutely iron ball bearings just banging into each other, whereas if we're actually come in a more compassionate way, we can support each other, we can begin to listen to each other. And this is where we need to start thinking about that seeking to understand rather than seeking to be understood. And you've got to practice that. Empathetic listening is really, really powerful, because that colleagues, will give you the accurate data you need to work with, because that is the insight into somebody else's soul, so what somebody else is thinking. And we need to practice it, because it's actually quite difficult when we're really sort of, we're time poor and we've got so much work to do. But you need to listen to understand. Steve Covey says, seek to understand rather than to be understood. So what I'm going to do now is introduce another activity that we need to think of, and you will gather there's a theme to this. The activities that I do, then they're very simple, because actually this doesn't need to be overcomplicated. I find it exhausting when academics come over and they overcomplicate things. So what I want you to do is, again, just spend 2 minutes considering experiences where you have had, where the person you've been line managed by or is in charge of a particular project has simply been thought to be understood and not listening empathetically, and actually shows no interest in seeking to understand your perspective. Think, how did that make me feel? What was the outcome of that? And also, colleagues, take some time to reflect when you've adopted a similar approach and what was the outcome. Because we've all done it. I know I've gone into meetings to say, but I need to be understood on this. But just because I need to be understood doesn't mean my starting point shouldn't be I needed to still to understand. So just 2 minutes again to reflect. I'll go on to this within, maybe in the series later on about creating psychologically safe environments where people have the confidence to say, actually, the reason I always put in for taking Fridays off is because of prayer. Because if you have that conversation, yes, you're quite right. And it is, we are running organisations. We can't turn around and say, right, half of the workforce has Fridays off, because that wouldn't be possible. But what we might be able to do is say, can we set up a prayer room? Can we set up an area that we can actually respect that? Just this last Christmas gone, I was working with an organisation, and it was just so, and it just showed some real cracks in it, and it came about by them trying to do something nice, to be fair, that they turned around and they said, because as an acknowledgement for all the hard work and everything that everybody's done, they gave them an extra day's annual leave, and they said that that would be on Christmas Eve, because many of these people have spent the last couple of years working solidly through Christmas. We all know it's our reality when you're working in health and social care. So they said they'd have Christmas Eve, and I was, involved in one of the meetings, and this particular person just like burst into tears and seemed overtly happy. And I thought, well, gosh, she's really happy. And so obviously, again, I sort of referenced that, went over, and I said, oh, you seem to be really, and they said, yeah, well, we celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve. And I've never been able to have Christmas Eve off before, because we've always been told, because it's a really, really busy day. And I've never been, and this is the first year I'll ever be able to, since my children have been born, that I'll be able to celebrate our Christmas with them. And I sort of thought, the fact that the organisation wasn't culturally aware that they have people that celebrate Christmas at different times, or some people that don't celebrate Christmas, so look at rotas and everything. And B, where's the psychological safety that people feel that they, can actually say, do you know what, in my culture we celebrate Christmas on this day, and as soon as I raised it, and this wasn't an awful organisation, and when I raised it, I said, gosh, we hadn't even thought about that. Why didn't they feel that they could come and say something? And I said, well, that's a conversation that we need to probably be working on, why they didn't feel that they could turn around and say that. Maybe because you've given out this message that it's the most important day, and everything's happening on Christmas Eve, and everybody, we need, it'll only be minimum time off. And this is the trouble, that we're seeing then people that aren't being able to say these things, that don't feel psychologically safe, so then they're going off sick. And often what happens, because we're not picking them off, we wait until they're really ill, then they're off with stress for a very, very long time. And what happens in the lead up to this, and this is what Professor Derek Mowbray, who I got to know because through the Institute of Health and Social Care Managers, because he did a presentation. I attended one of his presentations. He talks about psych presenteeism, I can't pronounce it, but you know what I mean. That it's about people being in work in body, but not in mind. And when people start to feel stressed, they gradually step back and then they're underperforming. So not only does somebody go off with stress, then people start to say, oh, they've gone off with stress, and guess what? I've had a look at their, do you know what, how many emails they haven't responded to? Have you had a look at their intro? They haven't had a chance to do this, and oh, well, I've done this. And you think, well, yes, but don't blame them. Look to how we could have created a more psychologically safe environment that they could actually wave a flag and say, I'm feeling unsafe, because this is when people lead to what's called emotional exhaustion. And emotional exhaustion is an absolute decay of an organisation, because it brings the productivity down. It contributes to that £26 billion, and you personally contribute to that. And also it's then people who are emotionally exhausted begin then to not turn up at short notice, so that has a real impact on your rota. It's because people are feeling overwhelmed. They're, and they're just feeling that they feel like, I can't do these long hours anymore. I can't continue with the pressure of meeting the deadlines. I don't feel that I'm having the time off that I need. And often what happens, and this is the real flip, you've all got shining stars in your organisation, phenomenal shining stars. But what happens, your shining stars are the ones that I can always call on them when I get let down on the rota at the last minute. I can call on them, they'll come in. I know that if somebody's doing that, I can say, oh, actually, could you step in and do this? What we're beginning to see is a rise in emotional exhaustion of these individuals, because they are the ones that should have finished shift at 8 o'clock but end up staying there till 10 because there's a safeguarding issue. And it's the same ones. These are the people that actually have forfeited their annual leave over the last couple of years because they got, no, honestly, I haven't got the same dependence that these individuals. I'll do it. I'll do that. No, I know I'll come in at the weekend and I'll cover that shift. And what's happening is that they still have lives outside of this, and they're becoming emotionally exhausted. And what you will begin to see is these individuals will become more anxious, more depressed. They won't be so sparkly as normal. They'll begin to feel hopeless and powerless. They'll actually become more irritable and we'll go, oh, blimey, I wonder whether that was out of character for that person. There's that lack of motivation. Rather than saying, yeah, I don't mind doing it, it'll be, oh, right, here we go again then. And the trouble is, we've got so used to this as a dialogue, we almost make a joke of it. Oh, here we go again then, back on our heads, guys, off we go. I'll bring in cake on a Friday and everything will be all right to get us through. Actually, no, not enough. Not enough. It's then we notice that people become tearful. We notice that people are getting more headaches, that people, are on, they haven't got the same appetite. It really needs to be addressed, because this is then what happens is it results in poor performance, negative communications, and then ultimately that increased sickness and time off, which really, really does hit you. So what I'm going to leave you with today, the final thing that I'm going to share, I am going to give you a post activity to share, is that here, just going through this. I know this is really, really small, but I just wanted to have something on there to show you. And Jade has a copy of this, so she can send it on to everybody. So what can we do to minimise emotional exhaustion? Because what we really, really need to do is to prevent rather than cure. So we can provide our signpost to accessible, non-judgmental support and advice. We can say, actually, yeah, there's no judgment here. We provide the support. You don't wait for somebody to ask. The amount of times I've had people who are in HR or related scenarios that they turn around and go, well, why didn't they just come? They know that's what I'm here for. But you've got to make that really, really open, that these will be accessible, non-judgmental support and advice. And it's not something you've got to sort of, people can do it in a very subtle, diplomatic way. Or if you don't provide that in-house, not everybody has the capacity. You can maybe be a really small team. Signpost to local organisations that people can access and give people time off work to access them. The point that I made about psychological safety, create a psychological safe work environment that employees need to know, and you might know as a leader, but they need to know that you prioritise their mental health, their well-being, their family, and asking for time to address issues if needed. They should not feel guilty about having to reevaluate their priorities in life. Their family, their well-being, their mental health needs to be their priority as human beings, but also it needs to be a priority for the effectiveness of your organisation. And also, and this is word to the wise, and this is the one that I really have to work at, you need to positively role model a healthy, sustainable, realistic work-life balance. And that gives employees permission to aim for their own better work-life balance. Okay, and this is the thing. I mean, and I know, and I hold my hands up, that certainly when I was a CEO, I was the one that, I thought, I'm the CEO, but I need to work longer hours than everybody else. I'd be the one that wouldn't take all my annual leave. And then when I did go off, I'd say, well, you've all got my contact details, contact me. I'd be the one that would turn around and miss family times because I'd say, no, it's all right, I don't mind, actually, what's a sports day between friends? I've asked somebody to record it for me. I shall turn up, And what I didn't realise I was doing, I thought that, don't worry, I'm here for you all. I'll work round the clock to be here for you all. But what I was doing was creating a really negative role model, because team members, and the only time it came to my attention was when a senior manager said to me, is there an expectation that we all start work in the early hours? And I go, I don't know what you're talking about. And they go, well, you sent an email out at 4 o'clock this morning. Did you expect me to pick that up and read that before I came into work? And I said, no, not at all. Not at all. I did it because I know that I'm on a train at 7 and that's the only time that I've got this, and I wanted you to pick it up when you came into work. And I thought, I haven't articulated that. And then I began to have a look at senior managers who weren't taking their annual leave, and I thought, I'm a really, really awful role model here. And actually, it was having a detriment to my health, holding my hands up, and I'm very happy to use myself as an example. I would, when I'd finally sort of stagger in, working as, again, this badge of honour, I work 7 days a week because I'm a CEO, and then there'd be times I just burst into tears. There'd be times where I couldn't even string a sentence together towards my family because I was completely depleted. And I was thinking, what on earth are you doing to your own mental health? How effective are you as a leader? And what kind of role model are you? We need to establish a positive work culture where breaks and annual leave are encouraged, that they're discussed at one-to-ones and they're monitored. So when we have our one-to-ones, we don't just do it as a performance review. We go, actually, I've noticed you haven't taken your annual leave. You need to get some annual leave in. Employees need to know it's good practice and not a sign of weakness to take a break, Freudian slip, to use your annual leave. And turn your phone off when you go to sleep. And I'll be honest with you, I have run 24-hour, 7 days a week organisation for so many years. I still take my phone to bed with me. And my husband turns around to me and says, because now I run Curve Strategic and do wonderful things like this. Who exactly are you expecting to phone you at 3 o'clock in the morning now for a safeguarding issue? Because I'm not altogether sure that anybody is going to. But it is a really difficult, hard habit to break. But you've got to instill that with people before they become leaders, because they will be the better leaders of the future. And you've got to start role modelling that yourself. And then the final thing is look at ways how we can introduce natural opportunities for good nutrition and exercise. So employees need to have opportunities to move away from their desks, their meeting tables, through introducing initiatives like walking meetings, mindfulness exercises, colouring, drawing, whatever you may want. You know, and I've heard people, you know, with people who are working, going, oh, well, yes, well, I phoned somebody and they're out walking their dog, you know, oh, I don't know how much time, or without putting the washing out. And you're thinking, yeah, well, probably because they started work half an hour before, probably because they'd read the same email 5 times and didn't know how to respond. And putting the washing out or walking the dog or going and walking around the office is, you know, the most effective way to deal with it. People need to be encouraged to take a proper lunch break away from their desks and have access to healthy hacks like fruit, water. In addition to cake days, I'm a great fan of cake days, but also to have fruit and water around the place. So when establishing emotionally intelligent workplace warfare, it's important for us to point out the positives in people rather than just, you know, the negatives, no matter how small they are. The small positive things can make a real difference and can really help you moving forward. So the final slide in the last couple of minutes, because I will finish at 1 o'clock, because I can't say all of this and then say, right, well, bad luck, you know, I've gone completely over and completely ignored you. But what I would invite you to do, and if you are open to this, and as I said that Jade has this, is take time after this to just review your current practice in an honest, transparent way. Reflect and revisit each of these activities. As a senior team, discuss each of the 5 points that I've just shared with you in an honest, transparent way, and then share it with your whole workforce, because it's important to involve everybody. As we've heard, there are cultural differences, there are personal differences, individual difference. So it's important that we show that we listen to people's individuals' needs and opinions. And start off by identifying and celebrating what are the positive things you are already doing and how can we build on those. Don't go in and sort of, you know, a 1 minute, right, oh, we need to do this, we need to do this. No hanging fruit, guys. You know, what changes can you easily make? And then what are the medium to high changes? And how can this impact your strategic vision and your plan? Because that way, colleagues, will be how we really influence what's going on in 5 to 10 years' time, because it will be embedded from an emotionally intelligent way. I do apologise for spending predominance of time talking at you, but that's the nature of these 1 hour sessions. But hopefully there's been enough to take away, and hopefully all of those points, for those of you that are going to join us on this session that's looking at emotional intelligence, the importance of that in teams, I'm going to pick up some of the things in that final post activity that I'll start with on the 18th of October when that next workshop is. So hand back over to you, John, and to you, Jade, to say goodbye for the final moments.
Thank you very much, Claire. I enjoyed that. I've made a load of notes as well. Got all sorts of stuff here. I could see lots of other people scribing away. I think those of you that are keen to come along to the next one, as Claire said, that's in October. We look forward to welcoming you to that. We've got a couple of minutes. Has anybody got any very quick observation they might like to make to Claire, or a very quick question? Some nice feedback for you in the chat anyway, Claire. So people have obviously enjoyed it.
So have a look at that.
All right, look, we'll leave it at that for today. Thank you very much, all of you, for tuning in. Thank you to Claire, of course, for giving of her time and spending an insightful session teaching us about emotional intelligence. We look forward to the next one, and we'll see all of you as members of the IHSCM at an event coming to you very shortly. Thank you and bye-bye.